Have you ever wondered if a single whispered sentence inside your mind could change the world you live in? We spend our whole lives listening to the noise out there, chasing expectations, decoding the glances and judgments of others. Yet we forget. It is that small, quiet voice within that truly shapes our feelings, decides our every choice, and builds the core of our resilience. Stoic philosophy reminded us thousands of years ago, your happiness, your strength, and your peace, they all begin with the quality of your inner dialogue, not what the world throws at you. If you've ever found yourself stuck in doubt, failure, or exhaustion because you can't control everything, try this. Give yourself just 3 days. 3 days to practice talking to yourself as your own best friend. This journey doesn't promise to change the outside world overnight, but I can promise you, if you truly experience it, just one timely self-talk can soften even the hardest heart, can rekindle the motivation and stillness you thought were lost for good. Are you ready to step into this 3-day self-talk challenge with me? Stay until the end, because the greatest gift may not be found in a distant philosophy, but in the simple moment when you truly listen and choose a gentle reminder for yourself. Starting today. If any part of this resonates with you, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss a single lesson on this Stoic journey, and leave a comment below. What self-talk will you choose to transform right now? 1. The power of self-talk. There are nights in America when the whole city has sunk into stillness. You lie in your small apartment, the weak golden light of your desk lamp casting shadows on the speckled ceiling, the distant sound of cars drifting down the interstate, the occasional chill of wind sneaking through the window pane. Everything seems to conspire with that quiet loneliness threading its way through your mind. In these moments, there's no one left to blame, no one to measure yourself against, just the truest, most private conversation between you and yourself. The questions, the reminders, the verdicts, or the quiet forgiveness that only you can hear. Maybe it's another failed day, what have you done with your life? Who would even care? Or sometimes just a soft sigh. Hang in there a little longer. Tomorrow will be better. If someone asked you which voice has shaped your soul the most, you'd probably think of your parents, your teachers, an old lover, or a friend you haven't seen in years. But when every connection out there falls silent, when you finally set down your phone and turn off all the noise from the world, only one current of self-talk remains, flowing on and on inside your mind. That very current is what gives color and texture to every single day of your life. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, spent his nights listening to himself, and in the pages of Meditations, he reminded himself, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. No matter who you are, where you live, or what you do, your essence is carved out day after day by the stories you tell yourself deep in your inner world, where no one else is watching or judging. Some think self-talk is just a kind of positive thinking, like the endless advice you see on social media. But Stoic philosophy isn't about denying sadness or pretending everything's okay. Stoicism teaches you something different. You must be brave enough to see the truth, strong enough to face your emotions without letting them sweep you away, and most importantly, wise enough to discern what's truly within your control and what is not. As Epictetus once wrote, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." What you whisper to yourself is not just a fleeting mood, it's the very foundation of your inner stronghold, so that even if the world outside collapses, you can remain unshaken within. Give yourself a moment, turn off all your screens, and ask, what have you told yourself the most today? Was it a gentle encouragement, or the same harsh verdict repeated again and again, like an endless trial with no verdict? Each night, Marcus Aurelius would write out his own worries, then gently ask himself, "Is this within my control?" If not, he learned to let it go with perfect calm. This wasn't avoidance, it was mind training, a daily discipline, a warrior's exercise, thought by thought, until he built an inner fortress of peace, unbreakable by any person or storm outside. Many young people in America grow up under the weight of success, in crowded cities and silent suburbs alike. They become accustomed to telling themselves, "I'm not good enough," "I need to try harder," or "No one really understands me." Over time, the self-talk of others becomes the measure of their worth, a stray comment from years ago looping endlessly as the soundtrack of their lives. Yet the strange thing is, just by changing one sentence of self-talk from blame to compassion, from fear to acceptance, from helplessness to choosing action, the entire inner world can begin to shift. Try writing down a few of the things you say to yourself every day, just as Marcus once did. Don't correct, don't judge. Simply write them exactly as they appear in your mind. Then ask yourself like a true Stoic, is this sentence adding a brick to my fortress, or is it carving a hole for the cold winds outside to break through? You might realize that what you need most isn't someone to rescue you, but for you to become your own best friend, the one who bravely chooses the color of your soul, who rewrites the story of each day, starting with a new kind of self-talk. If you're still doubting that a single inner conversation can change anything, remember what Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And maybe, right from this moment, by listening closely and choosing what you say to yourself, you are planting the first seed of peace on the journey back to yourself, where your inner fortress is built from stillness, mindfulness, and the quiet freedom of choosing for yourself. 2. Day 1. Listen and transform. There are autumn mornings in America, when the air isn't quite cold but the sunlight no longer holds its warmth. You wake up in a small apartment in an unfamiliar city. Everything looks the same, yet something inside you has changed. Outside, the sound of horns mingles with the wind, while inside, you stand before the mirror and realize sometimes you become your own harshest judge. The day doesn't truly begin with an alarm, but with a familiar self-talk echoing from deep within. "Here I am, failing again. Maybe I'll never be good enough." Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Sometimes, a single inner remark released amid a swirl of thoughts can turn into the soundtrack of a lifetime, quietly etching itself into every choice and every action. In a country where independence is a core value, every American grows up with at least one story that becomes an unspoken self-indictment, one that only you can hear and only you have the power to rewrite. But what happens if you dare to pause, to listen, and to write down what you're really saying to yourself? Jame's a friend from Kansas was once a top student, but after a major exam failure, the self-talk, "I am a failure," gnawed at him for years. One evening, after rereading Marcus's meditations, James decided to write down every self-criticism he'd been repeating, with no editing, no excuses. On the page, sentences like, "I'm not worthy," "I always let people down," began to appear, one after another. By the end, James looked back and realized he had allowed the past to define him for far too long. Even though Marcus once stressed, the past has no power except what we give it. Reflection. If you wrote down all the self-talk that plays on repeat in your mind, would you be surprised by the color of your soul you've been painting? Are you letting old verdicts from your past label you, forgetting that you can repaint your story at any moment? To truly transform, awareness alone isn't enough. A Stoic will always ask, what here is actually within my control? Epictetus once taught, Some things are up to us and others are not. Try pausing in the middle of tension like Sarah, a barista in Seattle, did on a particularly rough morning. After spilling coffee on a customer and being yelled at, Sarah once broke down in the restroom, haunted by the words, "I'm clumsy, I'm terrible." But then, remembering the dichotomy of control, she asked herself, "Can I control the customer's emotions? No. Can I control how I apologize, how I stand back up, how I learn from this mistake?" Yes, Sarah made a new rule. Whenever negative self-talk arose, she would pause, take a deep breath, and remind herself, "This feeling is real, but I get to choose my response." Reflection. If you asked yourself whenever fear arises, "Is this within my control?" what would you discover about your own freedom? Perhaps the most painful failures aren't from the outside, but from the judgments we heap on ourselves when we stumble. Daniel, a software engineer in Texas, used to let the self-talk, "I ruin everything," bury every new opportunity. Only after reading Seneca's words, "No one fails except those who refuse to learn from mistakes," did Daniel try writing, after every setback, "What is this teaching me?" Not just a new skill, but patience, self-compassion, and the courage to ask for help. Gradually, each failure became another page to be written, not a life sentence for the soul. Reflection. If you stumbled today, what would you write to yourself, a verdict or a lesson? If you were Marcus, what lesson would you record in your journal tonight? You won't always be strong enough to start over, especially when everything seems to collapse at once. In America, where so many have built themselves from zero, there are mornings you wake up and all you want is to stay under the covers, letting the world spin without you. Linda, a single mother in Chicago, lived through a year of losing her job, her marriage, her direction. But by reading Marcus's journals, Linda made a habit of telling herself every morning, "I am good enough to begin again, even if it's just with the smallest decision." One day, it was calling a loved one. One day, it was cleaning the kitchen. Another, it was simply getting dressed and smiling at herself in the mirror. No one gave Linda the motivation, but that single line of self-talk, and, strangely, each small action, each tiny reminder, became a seed for a different future. Reflection. If you could choose one small action to start over today, what would it be? What self-talk would you need to summon the courage to try again? Peace may be the hardest thing to find in modern life, but it's also what Stoicism emphasizes most. Peace is a daily choice, not a reward for the perfect. Seneca wrote, "Peace does not come when all things outside are calm, but when the soul is no longer shaken by those waves." You can practice pausing for just a minute, placing your hand over your heart, taking a deep breath, and quietly telling yourself, "I'm okay, even if everything isn't perfect. Peace is my choice right now." Reflection. Have you ever asked yourself what you're waiting for before you let yourself be at peace? Or could you choose peace even just for one breath, one moment, right now? And before ending this first day of your new journey, try a meditation ritual like Marcus practiced every night. Sit down, close your eyes, listen to your breath, and repeat to yourself one or two self-talk sentences you've chosen today. Maybe, "I am not the mistakes of my past. I control my reactions, not everything else. Failure is my teacher. I am good enough to start again. Peace is my choice." Let each of these words ring through you like the first soft bell of the evening, and sense just for a moment how gently listening and choosing to transform your inner voice can begin to light up a new path within you. If you'd like, write down below one negative self-talk line you recognize today and one new sentence to replace it tomorrow. Or simply ask yourself, if Marcus Aurelius were you tonight, what would he write for himself? so that tomorrow he could wake with a lighter heart. 3. Day 2. Redrawing your inner map. There are mornings when you wake up and look out the window of your New York apartment, the first light spilling across cold glass towers, your mind not yet sure how this day will unfold. Maybe last night you were weary, wishing, if only tomorrow I could live differently, if only things could go smoother, if only I didn't feel afraid each time I stepped outside, lost beneath all the invisible labels the world keeps placing on me. And then, as your mind begins sketching out a new day, you suddenly wonder, if you could truly redraw the map inside yourself, what would you choose to see? A sprawling, crowded city, or a quiet haven where you are free to be yourself even if no one out there understands or acknowledges it? Marcus Aurelius used to remind himself every morning, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. That's not a dreamy piece of advice, nor blind faith in luck. It's the art of actively redrawing the map of your mind, not with the dazzling colors of a perfect future, but with careful preparation for every emotion, every situation, even the worst that could happen. Imagine you're an athlete preparing for the biggest race of the year, like Jack, a Boston native who failed 3 times due to injury. The night before the competition, Jack didn't just visualize crossing the finish line to flags and cheers. He also practiced what he'd do if he stumbled, got hurt, or failed in front of thousands. Jack trained himself to get up, to forgive himself, to accept pain if it came, because he knew he couldn't control everything out there. But he could control his attitude and his choice to keep going. This is what Stoic visualization truly means, not forcing reality to bend to your will, but preparing for both the good and the bad, so that when reality arrives, you're no longer overwhelmed or swept away by emotion. Here's your practice. Close your eyes, picture the moment you achieve what you dream of, but also imagine the hardest things that might happen. What will you say to yourself? How will you act if tomorrow doesn't go your way? Many Americans grow up in the shadow of judgment, from family, from community, from social media. Emily's story in Los Angeles is far from unique. A young woman with a passion for art, always labeled as impractical, too sensitive, not strong enough to succeed. Every criticism planted a seed of self-doubt, and soon her self-talk echoed, "Maybe I really am nothing." These invisible labels became part of her daily dialogue, stealing her faith in herself. But one sleepless night, Emily read Seneca's words, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." From then on, Emily practiced writing down every label she'd ever received, facing them head-on with a new self-talk. "I am not what others say of me. My worth is rooted in who I am, not in anyone's approval or rejection." Try writing down the labels you've carried: clumsy, failure, lazy, not good enough. And next to each, craft a new self-talk, like a ritual for repainting your inner map. If Seneca were you, what would he whisper to himself every morning in the mirror? No one can predict tomorrow's storms can strike without warning. Losses come, things happen you never imagined. But a Stoic doesn't shrink or avoid these facts. They actively train the mind, using premeditatio malorum, imagining the worst, not out of pessimism, but to be ready to face reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When facing difficulty, remind yourself, you saw this coming, you prepared for it." Try writing out the 2 worst scenarios you could face tomorrow: losing a job, a fight, being misunderstood, and ask, if it really happened, what response would you choose to remain calm? This doesn't make you weak or fearful. It's how you develop a special kind of strength, the power to stand firm in any storm, because you've already pictured, prepared, and chosen your peace before the challenge even comes. If Epictetus were you, what would he say to your fears of tomorrow? Sometimes what seems the hardest becomes a starting point for a new life. David's father in Houston once lost everything after bankruptcy. There were days he'd just sit in his car, too scared to go home, whispering over and over, "How did it all go so wrong?" But one afternoon, David stumbled on Seneca's reminder, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." From that day, David started a small ritual. Every morning, instead of cursing adversity, he'd pick one tiny action to begin again. Send a job application, walk his child, or simply brew a cup of coffee and smile at himself in the mirror. Every hardship is a new beginning, he would tell himself. Gradually, those small acts stacked up into a new map, a new future. When you look back, can you think of a challenge that helped you grow? In hindsight, do you feel grateful for adversity forging your resilience? Some wait for happiness until everything is perfect, career flourishing, relationships ideal, health unshakable. But the Stoic understands that happiness is not a destination, but a state you choose along an imperfect journey. Marcus Aurelius emphasized, "Your happiness does not depend on outside conditions, but on how truly you live, according to your values." Imagine, if you never achieved every single thing you want, could you still choose peace, joy, and integrity right now, in the midst of imperfection? What makes you feel light, free, and truly yourself even if the world out there never fully recognizes it? Before closing this second day, I invite you to try a brief visualization meditation. Close your eyes and picture a peaceful tomorrow where you face every challenge, big or small, with clarity, gentleness, and courage. Imagine walking through some difficulty and still keeping faith in yourself, whispering, "Tomorrow might be hard, but I choose calm and steadfastness. That is my power." You can share, with yourself or with others, a visualization you want to practice, a piece of adversity where you'd like to rehearse a new Stoic self-talk. Remember, redrawing your inner map isn't about shortcuts, but about learning how to live serenely among all possibilities. Stoicism doesn't promise a future without challenge, but it will train you to walk through any tomorrow with a heart that is still wide and bright like the sunrise waiting beyond the city skyline. And every time you choose a new self-talk, a new attitude toward adversity, your inner map grows more peaceful until no storm out there can ever truly make you lose your way. 4. Self-talk of those who rise against the wind. Everyone, at least once, has stood in front of the mirror when life hit its lowest note. Not in moments of dazzling success, not when someone pats your back with encouragement, but when the world seems to have turned its back, or when all that remains inside is doubt and a sigh. It's in these fragile thresholds that your self-talk rings clearest the whispers that perhaps in a lifetime no one else will ever hear. And it's precisely at these boundaries that inner strength is forged not by miracles, but by the smallest self-reminders, quietly repeated day after day. If you think self-talk is just a beautiful theory on paper, listen to what Marcus Aurelius wrote when he found himself utterly alone on the burning fields of Rome. When night fell, all power and glory faded to shadows. Marcus was left only with himself, his worries, his wounds, his responsibilities, and the fears no one else could see. In the private pages of his meditations, he repeated a single truth: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Everything happening out there, victory, defeat, enemies, fates, beyond your control. But how you see, dialogue with, and choose virtue always remains in your own hands. That is why Marcus held his ground through unending storms, untouched by praise or blame, win or loss, quietly practicing virtue every single day. If you were Marcus, in a world as noisy and uncertain as ours, what self-talk would become the compass for your soul? Elsewhere in time, in a quiet boxing gym in Louisville, Kentucky, Muhammad Ali faced himself in the mirror. Not the audience, not the opponent, just himself, with all his doubts, his weaknesses, and a hunger bigger than any taunt. Ali would remind himself, "I am the greatest. I said that before I knew I was." Lao, before the world believed, he had believed in it himself enough, deep enough, long enough to turn that self-talk into a force no setback could extinguish. Ali's strength was not only in his fists, but in the faith forged through every punch, every loss, every lonely training day. This was not delusion, it was the courage to plant a seed of belief in the most barren soil, his own spirit. If you still find it hard to believe in yourself, what self-talk would you practice every day until it truly became part of your own heartbeat? In the American South, a young girl grew up in the shadows of violence and poverty, Oprah Winfrey. Through a childhood of loss and shame, when there was no one to teach her love, Oprah would hold herself by the window and whisper, "I am responsible for my life. I trust the process of life." No one came to rescue Oprah but herself. That mantra became her anchor, a silent promise to keep going, to rise from adversity, to practice virtue, integrity, perseverance, gratitude, and finally, faith in a life she could choose and own. If you've ever hurt from your past, ever thought you could never overcome it, ask yourself, what self-talk could become the bridge between now and a freer future? In the end, the resilient aren't born strong. They simply choose a single self-talk, a tiny seed to repeat for themselves long enough, steadfastly enough, until it becomes inseparable from the soul. Each time you face challenge or exhaustion, try asking, if I were Marcus, Ali, Oprah, simply the strongest version of myself, what self-talk would I choose to start again? You may never have believed in the power of a single phrase till it helps you stand through days when no one stands beside you. And who knows, perhaps all it takes is one choice, one timely self-reminder, and you will begin your own journey against the wind, starting right here, right now. 5. Day 3. Affirm and nurture your inner strength. If one day you were sent a simple letter from your own future, not to warn you, not to list achievements, but just to say thank you, what would you want that letter to say? Perhaps it would thank you for every time you stood before the mirror at the end of an ordinary day and managed a small smile for yourself. Maybe it would thank you for not abandoning yourself when you failed, for daring to try one more time, for choosing patience and compassion over judgment or regret. I believe that the journey of self-talk, even if it begins with the smallest of thoughts, can change your destiny if you are patient and sincere with yourself. And on this final day, I want you to sit quietly, listen to that soft voice within, and write for yourself a mantra deep and powerful enough to nourish virtue for a lifetime, even if no one else sees, even if your achievements have yet to appear. I once knew an American named Ethan, a finance worker in New York, always haunted by the pressure of performance, rankings, the gaze of his boss and co-workers. For years, Ethan's sense of worth was tethered to titles, recognition, every success and moment of praise. But then, during a round of layoffs, Ethan was let go, despite doing nothing wrong. Everything he believed about himself crumbled, leaving only a cold emptiness behind. It was in that darkness that Ethan stumbled upon an old note in a tattered notebook, a quote from Marcus Aurelius, "Value comes from within, not from praise or blame." Ethan began to write down 3 values he wanted to hold on to, even if no one else ever noticed: justice, courage, humility. Every morning, he repeated that mantra as a ritual, slowly realizing, If virtue is the core, then all the glory out there is only a fleeting test. Ask yourself, if one day there's no applause for you, what remains with you? Write down the 3 things you are most proud of, those only you understand, even if no one else ever sees them, and repeat them each day as a quiet promise to yourself. When people think of gratitude, they imagine something grander, life-changing opportunity, a special gift, a moment of brilliance. But gratitude self-talk in Stoic philosophy is far simpler. Chloe, an elementary school teacher in Minnesota, once felt exhausted by work, family, the pressures of raising children. Some days, just making dinner and reading a bedtime story to her child left her completely drained. One day, after reading Seneca, Chloe tried a simple practice. Every night before bed, she wrote down 3 of the smallest things she had done for herself. It could be a 10-minute walk, cooking a nourishing meal, or simply forgiving herself for losing her temper. The strength of gratitude lies in persistences, Marcus wrote. Nothing is small if it is repeated each day with gratitude. Chloe realized that the sum of those tiny moments gave her enough strength to withstand collapse, enough patience to keep loving her life, even when no one else recognized her effort. Ask yourself, what do you thank yourself for today, even if it's the smallest thing? Don't wait for a major success. Begin with the most ordinary gratitude self-talk, and let that gentle energy become the bedrock for all the challenges ahead. In America, society idolizes perfection, the ideal, successful person, the supermom, the outstanding leader. But beneath that surface are millions worn out from chasing standards that don't even exist. Mia, a tech engineer in San Francisco, once lived in a cycle of perfectionism. Every time she made a mistake, her self-talk was, "I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this." And she would exhaust herself trying to fix everything. Then one day, Mia read a new mantra, "Just a bit better than yesterday is enough." For the first time, Mia let herself record a small improvement each day and accepted imperfection. She realized true growth was continually practicing virtue, from humility in admitting mistakes, to courage in trying again, fairness to herself, and above all, refraining from harsh judgment. If you made just one small step forward today, have you allowed yourself to celebrate it? Write down one act, no matter how small, that shows you are living your virtue, so you know you are growing, even if you are not perfect. Nothing is harder than forgiving yourself, especially for old mistakes. Sometimes just a single wrong decision, hurting someone, or a failure you never want mentioned again. David, a veteran returned from Afghanistan, carried guilt for years over not being able to save a comrade in an explosion. Night after night, he was haunted by the self-talk, "I don't deserve another chance." It wasn't until he joined a veterans support group that David learned a lesson from Epictetus: forgive yourself for your mistakes. Virtue is forged in fire. For the first time, David wrote a letter to past David, not to apologize, but to thank him for having the courage to keep going despite imperfection. The greatest transformation isn't erasing your mistakes, but having the courage to see. Forgiveness is not surrender, but the only way to keep practicing virtue: patience, integrity, gratitude for the chance to live. Have you ever truly embraced yourself, forgiven, and thanked your own past? If not, try it once, for only by healing yourself can you offer compassion to others. In the end, every self-talk, every effort to practice virtue leads to one destination: inner peace, the deepest freedom of the Stoic soul. You may achieve many things, you may change the world, but if you do not choose peace within, you will always feel empty. Take a minute, sit quietly, close your eyes, listen to your breath, and remind yourself, peace is my choice, not a reward. Peace is not given to you, nor is it the prize for outward victories. It is the virtue you practice each day, through stillness, gratitude, and the courage to face reality. Will you choose peace today, or keep waiting for it to arrive from somewhere beyond your control? And as your 3-day journey closes, write a letter to your future self. Record a mantra you wish to carry forward, or a self-talk moment that truly changed you. You do not need anyone to validate your healing journey. If you can simply be compassionate with yourself, you are already enough. If something here has helped you, leave your mantra or share your experience in the comments, and don't forget to invite friends to join you to spread the flow of Stoic self-talk. Stoic self-talk number 3, Day Healing Challenge. Because with every right self-talk, every act of choosing virtue in a world full of trials, you plant a life for yourself that is deep, strong, and free. After 3 days journeying together through the path of Stoic self-talk, it's time to keep with you a quiet arsenal 15 essential self-talks, each one a seed of virtue, a brick in the fortress of your soul, strong and deep enough to shelter you through whatever new challenges tomorrow brings. Find a small corner in your room, print these lines, post them on your wall or fold them into your wallet, or simply save them on your phone as a gentle reminder each morning you wake. Each phrase is a virtue: compassion, self-control, wisdom, courage, inner freedom, clarity of vision, integrity, resilience, hope, acceptance, intrinsic value, gratitude, maturity, self-love, and stillness. When you whisper to yourself, "I am not the mistakes of my past. I control my reactions, not everything else. Failure is a teacher, not a sentence. I am good enough to begin again. Peace is a choice, not a reward. I give myself permission to imagine success. I am not what others say about me. Whatever happens, I actively choose my feelings. Every hardship is a new beginning. Happiness does not wait for perfection. My value does not come from outside approval. I am grateful for every small thing I do for myself. I choose growth, not perfection. I am worthy of my own love. Peace comes from within." These are not just fleeting words of encouragement, but a living map to guide you through every morning, a shield for those fragile moments, an anchor to bring you home to yourself when storms rise outside. And so, the final evening of this journey arrives. As a gentle breeze drifts through the window and warm light spills over the pages of your journal, you sit in stillness and listen. The world outside may not have changed your work, the crowded streets, the stories still unfinished. But as long as you have the patience to listen to your own heart, you'll find that somewhere deep inside, a new current has started to flow, a gentle stillness weaving itself through every corner of your life. Every self-talk you choose and faithfully repeat is a seed planted in the secret garden of your deepest peace. The goal is not perfection, but the moment you learn to love yourself, to practice virtue, integrity, courage, self-mastery, and compassion, and dare to live truthfully each day, no matter the storm. If this journey has touched you, share your favorite mantra or your experience in the comments below. Tag number Stoic Self-Talk number 3 Day Healing Challenge and invite someone you care about to walk this path with you. Be the first gentle stream for yourself, and you'll see out there so many other souls are waiting for healing, and all it takes is a single self-talk you dared to plant today.